kita dan juga undang-undang pilihan raya kita. So saya akan mulakan dulu. So okay, so seperti saya pernah kata, so the content of this talk will be starting off as such. I'll first explain on what is the meaning of constitution, apakah itu maksud perlembagaan, dan nombor dua, we will go more into the federal constitution of Malaysia, our own country's constitution, perlembagaan negara kita sendiri, dan thirdly we will look into the constitution and the organs of state. So di sini kita akan nampak dari situ kita akan pergi kandungan perlembagaan kita lebih kepada organisasi kerajaan, iaitu dari segi parlimen dan juga badan-badan eksekutif. Dan empat adalah separation of power ataupun it is more the meaning pasal apa kita ada separation of power. It is adalah salah satu ciri-ciri perlembagaan negara kita. Dan kelima adalah apa tu election, pilihan raya, dan enam adalah sistem election dalam negara kita. Dan akhir sekali floor akan dibuka untuk saudara-saudara dan saudara-saudari untuk tanyakan apa-apa soalan yang anda ada. So saya akan mula dulu dengan apakah maksud itu constitution. So maksud constitution ni dari this constitution means basically it is a foundation of a state governance, meaning it lay down the structure how a country should be governed. Maksud perlembagaan negara ni dia memberi satu gambaran dan juga satu struktur bagaimana satu negara perlu akan govern oleh kerajaan-kerajaan. Dan kalau dilihat ciri-ciri perlembagaan ni, dia mempunyai konsep-konsep tertentu, dan salah satu konsep yang paling terpenting adalah konsep separation of power dan juga rule of law. Tapi dalam ceramah hari ini, we will look more into what is the separation of power. Okay, alright. So apakah maksud juris? Juris adalah are the people who are scholars in law, how they define a particular law or book. So for constitution, they say that a constitution is meaning rules which regulate the structure of the principal organs of the government and their relationship with each other and to determine their function. So pakar-pakar undang-undang telah memberi maksud kepada perlembagaan adalah dia memberi satu peraturan ataupun undang-undang dan struktur organ-organ yang terpenting dalam kerajaan. Dan kita akan lihat lepas ni satu persatu apakah itu organ-organ tersebut dan juga hubungan antara sesama mereka, dan juga memberi paling penting dia memberikan fungsi-fungsi mereka, how they should function, bagaimanakah organ-organ tersebut boleh fungsi dari segi kadar sebagai kerajaan. So kita akan mulakan dulu, seterusnya kita akan lihat perlembagaan negara kita tersendiri, iaitu Federal Constitution of our own country. So as you all know, our perlembagaan, our constitution is known and called as the Federal Constitution, or in short form as FC. Perlembagaan negara kita adalah diketahui sebagai Federal Constitution. Ini nama ini adalah dibagi dari pertama sekali apabila ia telah didraftkan. Mengapakah dia dipanggil sebagai, dalam masa beliau dia dipanggil sebagai Perlembagaan Persekutuan. So why it is called as Federal Constitution? Mengapakah dia dipanggil sebagai Federal Constitution? Ini disebabkan the government powers are divided between the central organs, meaning the federal government, and the organ of state and the state government. So perlembagaan kita dipanggil sebagai Perlembagaan Persekutuan disebabkan kita mempunyai kerajaan di segi peringkat persekutuan dan juga kerajaan di peringkat negeri. Dan kuasa-kuasa ini telah dibahagikan bersama kerajaan negeri dan kerajaan persekutuan. Dan disebabkan itu salah satu sebab nama perlembagaan kita adalah Federal Constitution. Dan kalau dilihat perlembagaan negara kita juga di sistem perlembagaan kita adalah bermaksud raja perlembagaan, iaitu the constitution of our system also is known as constitutional monarch. As the head of our state, iaitu ketua negara kita adalah Yang di-Pertuan Agong. Itu datang dari Kesultanan Diraja. So sebelum kita pergi in detail lagi, saya hanya just want to give you all a brief history ataupun satu singkat sejarah bagaimanakah perlembagaan kita telah didraftkan. So sebagaimana kita yang tahu, kebanyakan yang kita tahu, sebenarnya Tunku Abdul Rahman bersama-sama delegasi-delegasi telah pergi ke London dan telah menghadiri bersama satu mesyuarat khas bersama-sama pihak-pihak British pada masa itu dan telah berbincang untuk mendapatkan kemerdekaan untuk negara kita. So there was a Malayan delegation led by the Tunku at that time to get the independence for us. And in that meeting, which is called as the London Conference, they have appointed an independent constitutional commission, which was known as the Reed Commission. So selepas dalam mesyuarat tu, satu keputusan telah diambil oleh pihak-pihak yang telah di mesyuarat tersebut untuk melantik satu satu komisen yang untuk mendraftkan perlembagaan negara kita. So pada masa tersebut, komisen tersebut telah diperketuai oleh Lord Reed, iaitu merupakan seorang hakim British, Sir Ivor Jennings, merupakan seorang pakar dalam undang-undang perlembagaan, Sir William Mackal, iaitu bekas Governor General untuk Australia, B. Malik, former High Court Justice dari India, dan juga
Yes, brother.
Justice Abdul Hamid of West Pakistan High Court telah merupakan komposisi yang ahli-ahli panel yang telah menolong untuk mendraftkan perlembagaan negara kita. So these are the panel members who have helped our country in drafting our own federal constitution. So currently in our federal constitution, it consists of 183 articles with 13 schedules. So perlembagaan negara kita, perlembagaan persekutuan negara kita mempunyai sebanyak 183 artikel dan juga 13 jadual-jadual yang merangkumi kesemua menyentuh fungsi-fungsi kerajaan dari segi eksekutif, parlimen dan juga mahkamah dalam negara kita. So seterusnya kita akan pergi untuk lihat. So sebagaimana yang saya telah katakan tadi, salah satu fungsi utama kita mempunyai perlembagaan persekutuan ini adalah untuk supaya kita dapat tahu bagaimana sebuah kerajaan boleh menjalankan tugas-tugas mereka dalam untuk how to govern a country actually. So coming to based on our own federal constitution, it touches mainly on these three organs actually, which is the function of legislative, the function of executive, and the function of judiciary. So in federal level, it compromises of the Yang di-Pertuan Agong, and we have the parliament, which consists of two houses, the Dewan Negara Senate, the upper house, and the Dewan Rakyat, House of Representatives, the lower house. And looking back into the state level, we have the Sultan or governors for states like Penang, Melaka, Sabah and Sarawak are governed by governors, not by sultans, and the state legislative assembly, which is the Dewan Undangan Negeri. And executive level, in the federal level, we have compromised the Yang di-Pertuan Agong, the government which includes the Prime Minister and his cabinets, and the civil servants, commissions and civil servants. And in state, similarly, the sultans or the governors, chief ministers or menteri besar, and the state excos, and also with the state government machineries. And as for judiciary, this includes the judges, court of law, which ranges from the subordinate court to the superior courts. So, but for today's talk, we will be mainly emphasizing on these two, which is the legislative and executive. As for the judiciary, it will be touched by my colleague, Ms. Aisha, tomorrow. So you guys will get to know more details of the judiciary and how its function is in this tomorrow's talk. So seperti mana saya katakan tadi, ini adalah tiga organ yang terpenting, iaitu menyentuh legislatif, eksekutif dan juga kehakiman. So dari segi persekutuan kita ia merangkumi bagi badan legislatif yang merangkumi yang di-Pertuan Agong, Dewan Negara, Dewan Rakyat, dan dari segi negeri yang merangkumi Sultan ataupun Governor dan juga Dewan Undangan Negeri. Dan untuk eksekutif dari segi persekutuan ialah yang di-Pertuan Agong dan juga kerajaan yang merangkumi Perdana Menteri dan juga kabinet menteri-menteri beliau. Dan bagi dari segi negeri adalah Sultan, Governor, Ketua Menteri, Menteri Besar ataupun state kepimpinan ESCO dan juga ahli-ahli jawatan kerajaan iaitu civil service lah. So seterusnya kita akan lihat satu persatu seperti saya mana kata, kita akan lihat badan legislatif dengan eksekutif, tapi we will be looking more into the federal level rather than state level as the function of these members are similarly in state level. So kebanyakan kuasa-kuasa ataupun cara bagaimana badan-badan ini berfungsi adalah sama dengan dari segi peringkat persekutuan dan juga di peringkat negeri juga. Okay, alright. So kita akan pergi ke seterusnya iaitu badan legislatif. We will go to next the legislative organ. So I would like to go on with the legislative organ because I believe in any democracy countries and also in our own constitution, the legislative plays the most important role and apart from the other bodies. One of it is because we choose the members ourselves in the process of in 5 years for once of voting our elected members. So in Malaysia, in federal level, we have the Parliament of Malaysia. So in Malaysia, we follow the Westminster system. It is a system based on module of the United Kingdom's politics or parliament system actually. And also we practice bicameral system, meaning we have two houses. One is the upper house and one is the lower house. And seperti mana saudara dan saudari tahu, saya ingin memulakan dengan organ ni iaitu organ legislatif. Saya percaya organ ni adalah satu organ yang paling penting dalam semua negara yang mempraktiskan demokrasi sebab member-member ataupun ahli-ahli yang duduk dalam organ ni adalah merupakan ahli yang telah dipilih oleh kita sendiri melalui pilihan raya. So dalam kerajaan Malaysia, dalam ikutkan modul Malaysia, mengikutkan lembaga persekutuan kita mengikut sistem Westminster iaitu satu modul yang berdasarkan dari kerajaan United Kingdom. Dan negara dalam parlimen kita mempunyai dua rumah sebenarnya iaitu dua dewan, iaitu Dewan Rakyat dan juga Dewan Negara. Kalau kita lihat sini, ini adalah Dewan Rakyat dan ini adalah Dewan Negara. So kalau dilihatkan just a brief history, when first time Malaysia had its election or its elected members in the legislative organ, that time the members was around, if not mistaken, 51 seats at that time. And now slowly, as you all know, the seat have gradually become bigger and after Sabah and Sarawak joined us, it become bigger and now we have total of 222 seats. So kalau dilihatkan dari sejarah, pertama sekali apabila Malaysia mengadakan pilihan raya itu pada tahun 1955, pada masa tersebut 55 ahli telah menjadi sebagai ahli parlimen pada masa tersebut. Dan dari masa ke semasa dan selepas kemasukan Sabah dan Sarawak kepada dalam sebagai negara Malaysia, sekarang dan lama ke lama kita sekarang mempunyai lebih dekat 222 kerusi sebagai ahli parlimen. So seterusnya kita akan lihat siapa yang ada dalam parlimen dan apakah kualifikasi untuk menjadi seorang ahli parlimen. So now we will look into the composition of the parliament and the qualification and also what will make a member of parliament to be disqualified. And all of these, as you can see, as I put A and ART, meaning it is all been clearly prescribed in the federal constitution of our constitution. Kalau kalian anda lihat berdasarkan dalam ni saya tulis berdasarkan artikel 40, artikel 55, ini bermaksud ke semua fungsi-fungsi ini ataupun ini semua telah telah dinyatakan dengan jelas dalam perlembagan persekutuan kita. So pertama sekali, seperti mana saya katakan, Yang di-Pertuan Agong is also part of the our parliament system. Why so? But mainly he's there for ceremonial purposes as per under the Article 55 of the Constitution. He mainly act on the advice of the PM, except in regards of dissolving the parliament, as it is his discretion as prescribed by Article 42 of subpara B. But one of his main function why he's part of the parliament is because being head of the country, after a bill or a law is passed by the parliament, it is his duty to assent, meaning to give the how to say official of recognizing it, making it as an official law of the country actually. So seperti mana kalian anda semua tahu, Yang di-Pertuan Agong merupakan salah seorang komposisi parlimen sistem parlimen kita. Walaupun dia berada di sana sebagai sebagai simbolik ataupun ceremonial purposes saja, ini disebabkan berdasarkan Artikel 55, dia bertindak atas nasihat Perdana Menteri, kecuali dari segi parlimen dia ada untuk menentukan ataupun nak kata discretion, dia ada kuasa dia sendiri untuk menentukan sama ada apabila dia telah dinasihat oleh Perdana Menteri untuk membubarkan parlimen. So di bawah Artikel 40 sub 2 sub B, dia dikatakan Yang di-Pertuan Agong boleh membuat keputusan sendiri sama ada untuk nak accept nasihat Perdana Menteri ataupun tidak. So itu dan apapun paling penting Yang di-Pertuan Agong telah berada dalam sistem parlimen ini, dalam parlimen kita, adalah untuk apabila satu undang-undang ataupun satu bil telah diluluskan oleh parlimen kita, Yang di-Pertuan Agong telah dipertanggungjawabkan oleh lembaga persekutuan kita untuk memberi kelulusan ataupun action untuk menjadikan undang-undang tersebut secara rasmi dalam untuk diguna pakaikan dalam negara kita. So yang tu mengikut Artikel 66 sub 4. So we'll go next to the Dewan Rakyat. Siapakah ahli-ahli Dewan Rakyat? Dewan Rakyat adalah in English dipanggil sebagai House of Representatives. Ia adalah rumah yang kedua, is the lower house. So berdasarkan Artikel 46, kita ahli-ahli dia adalah dipilih oleh rakyat-rakyat Malaysia, iaitu berdasarkan pilihan raya yang berlaku setiap 5 tahun, dan berdasarkan Artikel 46 kita mempunyai 222 kerusi ahli-ahli parlimen. Yang ini mengikut komposisi di mana dalam di bawah Artikel 46 ni ia telah dijelaskan dengan dinyatakan dengan jelas setiap negeri mempunyai berapa kerusi. Dan kalau dilihatkan di Pulau Pinang, komposisi mengikut Artikel 46 kita mempunyai keseluruhan 13 kerusi parlimen. So dan negeri-negeri lain negeri-negeri yang besar akan mempunyai kerusi-kerusi yang lebih besar, mempunyai kerusi yang lebih banyak dari segi parlimen. Okay. Dan kedua adalah Dewan Negara. The second house is the Senate. In English is known as Senate. The upper house. This is consists of the elected and appointed members. Ini berdasarkan this is in accordance with Article 45, and the total numbers of the Senate members are 69 members. So kalau dilihatkan dalam bagi untuk Dewan Negara, ahli-ahli dia adalah merangkumi daripada ahli-ahli yang telah dilantik dan juga telah dipilih. Mengikut Artikel 45, keseluruhan nombor jumlah kerusi Senate adalah 69, dan mengikut Artikel 45 bermaksud siapa yang dilantik, what it means by elected, it means each state. So we have a total of 13 states plus with the federal territory state, which is 3, Kuala Lumpur, Labuan and Putrajaya. And including federal territory here means it means 1. That's why in our flag we have 14. We say it as 14 states because the 13 is the original state, and the one more is the federal territories, which consists of Kuala Lumpur, Putrajaya and Labuan. So these 14 states under the Article 45 of the Constitution is allowed to elect 2 members as the members of Senate. So basically the State Legislative Assembly will the chief ministers or Menteri Besar of the particular states And for the federal territories will be the federal territories minister. The prime minister will appoint. They will send over the name to the state legislative assemblies. Then the state legislative assemblies will then approve these particular names who have been nominated. Then they will be sent over to the Senate as Senate members. So with that, the remaining 45 seats will be appointed by the Yang di-Pertuan Agong on the advice of the Prime Minister. So Dewan Negara ni seperti saya mana kata, dia merangkumi ahli-ahli yang telah dipilih dan dilantik mengikut artikel 45. Ini bermaksud kita mempunyai 14 negeri dan 13 negeri di mana ketua-ketua menteri dan juga menteri besar akan memberikan nama-nama, mencarakan nama-nama tersebut di dalam Dewan Undangan Negeri, dan ahli-ahli Dewan Undangan Negeri akan meluluskan nama-nama tersebut dan mereka nama-nama tersebut akan dihantar kepada Speaker Dewan Negara dan ahli-ahli tersebut akan dilantik secara rasmi. Dan yang baki selebihnya iaitu sebanyak 45 kerusi akan dilantik oleh Yang di-Pertuan Agong dengan nasihat berdasarkan nasihat Perdana Menteri. Ini bermaksud yang baki 45 itu adalah berdasarkan lantikan oleh Perdana Menteri berdasarkan nasihat beliau kepada Yang di-Pertuan Agong. So seterusnya, apakah kualifikasi untuk menjadi seorang ahli Dewan Negara dan juga Dewan Rakyat? So what are the qualifications to become a member of the Senate or the Dewan Rakyat in Malaysia and as prescribed by the Federal Constitution? So for Dewan Negara, the qualification as per Article 47 is that the member has to be a citizen and he must not be less than 30 years old. And for Dewan Rakyat, also similar, has to be a citizen and must not be less than 18 years old. This is per Article 47. So untuk menjadi seorang ahli Dewan Negara ataupun ahli Dewan Rakyat perlu merupakan seorang ahli tersebut perlu menjadi seorang warga negara dan juga tidak kurang daripada 30 tahun. Untuk Dewan Rakyat juga sebagai seorang warga negara dan juga tidak kurang daripada 18 tahun. But to be disqualified, what are the reasons a member of Dewan Rakyat or Dewan Negara can be disqualified are following. Under Article 48, it clearly said if they were declared as bankrupt or they hold or office which give them certain profit, they have been nominated for Dewan Negara. If they nominated to do either Dewan Rakyat, they cannot, because under Article 49, either in Dewan Rakyat or Dewan Negara, neither of the members can hold dual membership, double membership. Meaning, if you are Dewan Rakyat, you cannot also become a Dewan Negara. At the same time, in Dewan Rakyat, you cannot become a member of Dewan Rakyat for two consecutive. Example, you have a seat in Penang. At the same time, you want to hold stand in an election for parliament seat in Johor. It is not allowed under Article 49 of the Constitution. Similarly, for Dewan Negara also, you cannot be appointed for a particular state as a Senate member, at the same time also a Senate member for another state. So berdasarkan Artikel 49 Perlembagaan Negara kita, seseorang ahli Dewan Rakyat ataupun Dewan Negara tidak boleh mempunyai dua keahlian. Bermaksud ahli Dewan Rakyat tidak boleh menjadi ahli Dewan Negara dan ahli Dewan Negara tidak boleh menjadi ahli Dewan Rakyat. Dan sama sekali kalau seseorang ahli Dewan Rakyat itu ingin tidak boleh menjadi ahli parlimen untuk di dua tempat, hanya boleh di satu tempat sahaja. Dan sama untuk di ahli Dewan Negara juga. Dan as I state, if there were any offence been convicted di bawah artikel 48, dia dikatakan denda hukuman penjara tidak boleh melebihi satu. Kalau seseorang ahli parlimen tu, kalau didapati dia telah bersalah, tetapi hukuman penjara tu tidak boleh melebihi 1 bulan, dan juga ataupun denda diberi tidak boleh melebihi 1,000. Kalau ahli parlimen tu telah didapati membuat kesalahan lebih daripada mendapat hukuman penjara lebih daripada 1 bulan dan juga denda lebih daripada 1,000, kerusi beliau sebagai ahli parlimen akan automatically akan menjadi kosong. It vacant lah mengikut Artikel 50 Perlembagaan Negara kita. So coming to the case of some of you might have the question why Datuk Sri Najib Abdul Razak have yet to have his seat vacant. This is because even though his punishment is nearly 12 years plus, 12 years, and his sentencing is more than 1,000 ringgit, by right his seat should be vacant. But then in due process of the law, he is appealing his criminal case now, his case, and now is currently in federal court. And I believe tomorrow Ms. Aisha will be touching on it. You will get a clear picture why his seat is not being vacant under as per Article 50 of the Federal Constitution. So next, the life of Parliament and meetings of Parliament. Seterusnya adalah berapa tahun Parlimen itu akan berdudukan dan juga berapa kali Parlimen akan bermesyuarat. So kalau dilihatkan dari segi Dewan Negara ni tidak ada apa-apa klausa yang di bawah Perlembagaan Persekutuan kita yang mengatakan ni Dewan Negara akan dibubarkan. Dan juga pelantikan ahli-ahli Dewan Negara ni adalah merupakan satu pelantikan yang is a fix lah, dia sudah fix, dia tidak ada seperti di Dewan Rakyat. Sebab dari segi Dewan Rakyat dia live Dewan Rakyat ni adalah 5 tahun mengikut Artikel 55 sub 3. Ini bermaksud every 5 years the Dewan Rakyat will be dissolved, and hence why we have the election. But unlike in Dewan Negara, it will not be dissolved and the members are appointed on fixed tenure. But there is some differences between Dewan Rakyat and Dewan Negara's tenure, where for Dewan Rakyat, as I said, the members are elected by ourselves, the Rakyat, for every 5 years. But in Dewan Negara, as I said, is by the state legislative assembly and by the Prime Minister. However, there's a limitation of how many years a particular members can serve in Dewan Negara. In Dewan Negara, they only can be appointed twice for 3 years, meaning a total of 6 years only that particular member can serve in Dewan Negara as per the Constitution. And for Dewan Rakyat, there's no bar. A person can be a member of Parliament as how many times as he wants, as long he stand in a constituent, people vote for him, the Rakyat vote for him, and he wants, and he becomes a member of Parliament. But there's no bar, like how many times, unlike in Dewan Negara. So bagi sehingga mana Dewan ada sedikit perbezaan dari segi servis ataupun nak kata kedudukan sampai bilakah seseorang ahli tersebut boleh menjadi ahli-ahli Dewan Negara dan juga Dewan Rakyat. Bagi ahli Dewan Negara, dia hanya boleh menjadi ahli Dewan Negara untuk 6 tahun saja. Disebabkan ahli-ahli Dewan Negara dilantik untuk setiap 3 tahun. So bermaksud kalau saya telah dilantik sebagai ahli Dewan Negara untuk kali pertama, saya akan berkhidmat untuk 3 tahun, dan selepas tu saya hanya boleh dilantik lagi sekali untuk kali terakhir, iaitu dan saya akan berkhidmat untuk lagi 3 tahun. So secara jumlah hanya untuk 6 tahun, tapi ini tidak terpakai untuk Dewan Rakyat disebabkan ahli-ahli Dewan Rakyat akan dilantik setiap 5 tahun mengikut Artikel 55 sub 3, tetapi tidak ada apa-apa nak kata macam mana bantahan ataupun satu restriction lah nak katakan, di mana ahli-ahli Dewan Rakyat ni boleh dilantik asalkan mereka menjadi calon pilihan raya di tempat mana-mana tempat ahli-ahli dewan-dewan kerusi Dewan Rakyat dan telah memenangi pilihan raya tersebut, mereka boleh menjadi ahli Dewan Rakyat sehingga mana mereka merasa mereka ingin memberikan khidmat kepada rakyat. Seterusnya, berapa kali ke Parlimen perlu bermesyuarat? Kalau diikutkan mengikut Artikel 55 sub 1, tanggungjawab ini telah dipertanggungjawabkan kepada Yang di-Pertuan Agong dalam perlembagaan untuk memastikan mesyuarat Parlimen itu berlaku. Sebagai contoh, kalau Parlimen telah menduduki untuk mesyuarat pada bulan Mac ini, Yang di-Pertuan Agong perlu memastikan dalam 6 bulan dari tarikh terakhir Parlimen Dewan Rakyat telah mengadakan mesyuarat, dalam lingkungan 6 bulan tu perlu adanya satu lagi mesyuarat kecuali parlimen telah dibubarkan. Dan selalunya dalam satu sesi parlimen selalunya kita akan ada 5 hingga 6 mesyuarat dan ikut harian. Dan juga kalau kalian lihat di bawah ni, quorum apabila parlimen bermesyuarat bagi Dewan Rakyat, quorum pada hari tersebut perlu memastikan quorum minimum untuk Dewan Rakyat mulakan mesyuarat adalah 26 ahli parlimen dan untuk Dewan Negara adalah 10 ahli Dewan Negara. So, jikalau pada hari tersebut 26 ahli tidak ada di Dewan Rakyat dan 10 ahli Dewan Negara tidak ada, mesyuarat tidak boleh dijalankan. Ini adalah mengikut seperti mana telah dimaktubkan dalam perlembagaan negara kita dan juga dalam undang-undang jawatankuasa parlimen. So ini adalah dari segi mana berapa kali parlimen akan bermesyuarat dan juga life of parliament. But when it comes to the how many time a meetings has to be done in parliament, it always will be determined by the speaker of the house, which is the Dewan Rakyat speaker for Dewan Rakyat and Dewan Negara speaker for Dewan Negara. But how long the parliament sitting, it will be advised by the government to the speaker actually, because the speaker is considered the prime minister is considered as the head of house. So seterusnya, you'll be looking into the function of parliament. So firstly on the function of Dewan Rakyat, the lower house. So sekarang kita akan lihat apakah fungsi parlimen secara spesifik. Kita akan lihat Dewan Rakyat, lower house. So fungsi yang paling penting atau fungsi yang paling most important yang akan dilakukan oleh Dewan Rakyat adalah untuk dari segi meluluskan undang-undang atau membuat pindahan terhadap undang-undang atau membatalkan sesebuah undang-undang, dan ini telah dimaktubkan di bawah artikel 44 Perlembagaan Persekutuan kita. So looking into what is the main function or the prime function of the legislative body, which is the parliament, is to pass, amend or abolish a law as prescribed under article 44 of the Federal Constitution. And yang kedua, kalian kena tahu berdasarkan Perlembagaan Persekutuan kita, semua bil-bil ataupun undang-undang yang merangkumi kewangan, seperti yang kalian tahu, bajet yang selalunya dalam negara kita akan dibentangkan oleh kerajaan pada sesi mesyuarat pada bulan Oktober ataupun November selalunya. Dan jikalau bajet ataupun bil-bil keundangan tidak diluluskan oleh parlimen, maka tahun seterusnya kerajaan tidak akan ada duit. Ini disebabkan dari segi kewangan, kesemua ini perlu badan eksekutif iaitu kerajaan, Perdana Menteri dan kabinet beliau perlu mendapatkan kelulusan dulu daripada dari parlimen dulu. Ini disebabkan mengikut perlembagaan negara kita, ia telah dipertanggungjawabkan di bawah dan kuasa telah diberikan kepada parlimen untuk meluluskan dari segi kewangan. If you look into the next function will be the control of the national expenditure and taxation. This is because the constitution, our constitution, are clearly prescribed and given out the responsibility to the parliament to approve the expenditures and money bills. And if the parliament does not approve it or fail to pass a budget or money bill, then the government will not have a budget or taxation on how their expenses going to be, how to run their country, the government for the following years. And hence it is why some of you might know after the Sheraton move and at the time when Tan Sri Muhyiddin's government was going on, there was a lot of hot news saying that the government might fail if that the budget bill is going to be some sort of a confidence vote on the administration of Tan Sri Muhyiddin Yassin, because yes, if a budget is not passed, then of course a government cannot be run, and therefore it is always taken by law scholars and juries that also as part of a confidence vote on the government actually. So hence it is why it is very important and all the time that the government ensures they have the proper enough support to ensure the budget is passed in parliament, because without it the government cannot has anything on monetary wise to run the government day actually. And apart from that, one of the most important committee that has been established is the Public Accounts Committee, or known as PAC. They basically scrutinize how the money that the budget have been passed, how the money has been used by each ministries and each government bodies in our country, how the monies are being valued whenever the budget has been passed. And they rely heavily on the Auditor General's report. From there, they will get to know how the money is, and they sometimes will call upon the ministers or the Secretary General of the ministries to give answer why such amount of expenses have been done, or why this money have not been used, and so on. So, and kalian juga kena perlu tahu yang selain daripada meluluskan undang-undang money bills, di bawah Parlimen juga mempunyai satu kuasa untuk melantik satu jawatan kuasa dipanggil sebagai Public Accounts Committee, dan jawatan kuasa ini bertanggungjawabkan untuk melihatkan diperlihatkan untuk bagaimanakah akaun-akaun wang-wang yang telah diluluskan, telah digunakan oleh kerajaan, dan juga kalau dikatakan kerajaan dari segi semua kementerian di negara kita sebenarnya. Dan ketiga pula adalah untuk memastikan Parlimen ni adalah merupakan satu forum untuk memastikan badan eksekutif iaitu kerajaan dari segi menteri dan Perdana Menteri memberi jawapan kepada rakyat, sebab forum itu di situ adalah disebutkan ahli-ahli Dewan Rakyat ataupun ahli-ahli Parlimen, khususnya Dewan Rakyat telah dilantik oleh kita sendiri sebagai wakil kita, dan wakil-wakil kita yang akan berada di sana untuk memastikan semua keluhan kita, masalah kita dibawa dan dijawab oleh kerajaan, dan memastikan satu polisi atau undang-undang diluluskan untuk kejayaan dan kesejahteraan rakyat. So if you see, the last function of Dewan Rakyat is to be enforcement of as an accountability and answerability, because the members of parliament are basically elected by us and they are there representing us, and it is their job to question each ministers and also the prime ministers on the laws that are being passed, the policies that they are trying to work on. And that's why the parliament is state one of the most important organ, because that's how the rakyat get answers and ensure it is ensured that a proper policy and a law has been passed for the harmony and for the economic moving forward of our country actually. So that is the function of Dewan Rakyat mainly. Next we'll go into Dewan Negara, the upper house. As I said, the Dewan Negara function is, as you see in number 3, the reason why we have this Dewan Negara or the upper house is because it's basically on the understanding the principle of ensuring every state has a say whenever a law is passed. Hence it is why we have a upper house, because upon the Dewan Rakyat pass a bill, it will then go to the Dewan Negara, and Dewan Negara will do the similar process how I have done in Dewan Rakyat, which will look after this. And once Dewan Negara passed, then only the law will go to the Yang di-Pertuan Agong to be assent as official law. And if the Dewan Negara does not pass it, then the bill will be just stuck at there. And another thing why we have Dewan Negara is also sometimes because, as you know, in Dewan Negara, as I mentioned earlier, as per Article 45, the members are not only appointed by the state, each state, but also by the Prime Minister. And in this appointment, the Prime Minister might appoint some professionals from overall consists of the doctors, law experts, or even members who have done some social contribution to our countries, mainly will be appointed by the Prime Minister to be And with their views, some of the law that has been passed by the Dewan Rakyat can be revised, improvised, so that we have a better law to come up. And it is mainly there to ensure a proper check and limit, because even in Dewan Negara, the ministers has to attend the session, and whereby questions will be asked by the Dewan Nagara's members in a sense of accountability and also answerability. The ministers and prime ministers are required to give answer same in Dewan Rakyat also. So that is the function of Dewan Nagara. Next, so we look into the how a bill is passed in Parliament, how bills goes through stage by stage, and as we most of us, we always sometimes I believe most of us here will watch the Parliament sessions. Sometimes we might think, what are they doing? Most of the time we see how they debate, and but we do not understand how the procedure works and happens actually. So as per Article 62 of our federal constitution, it is the constitution prescribed that we can take up our own system on how to make the parliament function, how it can pass a law. And as I said earlier, we follow the Westminster system. Therefore, it is modeled on the UK, and this is how the UK does their pass their law, and similar we follow here. So seperti mana saudara-saudara saya beritahu sebelum ni, mengikut artikel 62 Perlembagaan Persekutuan kita, perlembagaan telah maktubkan bahawa negara kita sendiri boleh memilih bagaimanakah cara parlimen kita akan berfungsi, mengikut undang-undang apa atau apapun proses dia. Dan seperti saya beritahu sebelum ni, kita mengikut sistem Westminster, iaitu modul dari berdasarkan Parlimen United Kingdom. So dan kebanyakan undang-undang jawatan kuasa parlimen yang selalunya kita lihat apabila ahli-ahli Dewan Rakyat akan selalu kata point of order, speaker point of order, dan mereka akan baca buku tu. So buku tersebut adalah merupakan undang-undang parlimen tersendiri, bagaimanakah mesyuarat parlimen akan dijalankan. Dan dalam undang-undang buku tersebut juga telah dimaktubkan ke semua proses-proses yang saya akan terangkan selepas ini. So guys, as you all know, as I said, based on Article 62, the Parliament has to have their own rules, and we are based modeled on the Westminster system. Hence, that's why if you all, when we watch the Parliament session, we can see sometimes some member of Parliament will raise up, looking into a small book saying, "Speaker, I have a point of order," because that is the rules that on how a Parliament session should be handled in Dewan Rakyat. And whatever process that I'm going to explain now is prescribed and mentioned in that particular book actually, how a law should be passed. All right, so as you all know, when a law is to be passed, there will be a first reading actually. So in this first reading, the minister in charge of that particular portfolio, for instances, we have the minister in for the Parliament and Law Affairs. So example, the Parliament's example for now, the anti-hopping law is one of the law that has been being a popular law that maybe soon going to be come up for the first reading this coming March sitting. So in that March sitting, what will happen? The law minister currently, who is YB Wan Junaidi, he will come up. Either him or his timbalan will, on the basis, they will read the title of the bill first. The speaker will ask, will inform the secretary of the Dewan to read out, to call up. So the minister will read out the title of bill, but there will be yet to be debate or voting. Then after that, it is just an official introduction to the Dewan and also to the members that a bill has been brought by the government. Then the bill will be then circulated to all the 222 members. So after that, again, second reading, the speaker will call up the secretary to read out the bill. So this is where it is a crucial stage, because there will be a debate from the opposition and backbenchers on looking into the main merit and principle why that bill is needed and why it needs to be passed. And again, at this stage, there will be no amendment, because whenever a bill is being brought by the government, there's already a study been done. It has been drafted by the Attorney General's chambers. Then it will be passed to cabinet. Cabinet will then approve it, then only the minister will bring it to parliament actually. So at this stage, whatever bills or sections that has been drafted will not be allowed to amend it yet. So the minister who are in charge, for instance, I say for anti-doping law, then YB1 Junadi will stood up and then will answer or give reply to all the points that have been raised by all the members, whichever members have raised up issues with the pudding. Then after that, a voting will take place. So when a voting takes place here means as long a majority member, for instance, the quorum on the day is 86 members are there. If majority of the 86 members or 80 or 70 members and few remaining members go against it, but then the bill is considered passed and goes to the next stage, which is the committee stage. In this committee stage is mainly known as the amended stage. But in Malaysia's parliament, for committee stage, what will happen is that we will not, the bill will not go to a specific committee, but the whole house will be changed as Mesyuarat Kamar Khas actually, as a committee. They will say Mesyuarat Jawatan Kuasa, sorry, as a. So then at this stage, there will also a debate will go on, whereby certain amendments will be how to say, will be, sorry, I stuck for a while. Will be proposed. Yes, certain amendments will be proposed here, and then on that, if there are few amendments for instances, there are individual amendments for particular sections, then the vote will be taken one by one for each amendments. Again here, if the majority vote for that particular amendment, then the amendment will be allowed. If the amendment is the amendment never go through a majority, then amendment will be withdrawn. So after that, after the committee stage, then we'll go to the report stage. This is where in this stage the bill will be. I'm so sorry about this. There's some repeat typo already. Okay, but in this report stage, what will happen is that the bill will then, as I said earlier, in the committee stage, the whole house will become sebagai mesyuarat jawatan kuasa, but then it will be then changed back as a Dewan Rakyat. The speaker will announce now the parliament, the house is sitting as a normal Dewan Rakyat. The bill will be then reported back. The minister will read back the bill and tell out. Then they will go for a third reading, whereby there will be a final debate. And in this stage, it is where most of the members of parliament will try to debate and ensure certain amendments to be allowed. But then most of the times the amendments will not be allowed, because at this third reading, the government side, they just want to push through the bill and to ensure the bill is passed. So again, a voting will be take place, and if majority votes, the bill will be passed. But to take note, all right, if the bill is considered a constitutional amendment, then it requires 2/3 majority, meaning 148 votes, meaning 148 members have to vote to pass the bill as per the Article 159 prescribed in the Constitution. So after the third reading, meaning after a bill has been voted passed, meaning it has passed in Dewan Rakyat, then next it will go to Dewan Negara. So in Dewan Negara, the similar procedure that I have mentioned earlier now will be followed by in Dewan Negara. But if sometimes there are cases where sometimes Dewan Negara might have some different views in how the process should be or how the bill should be. So if there are such differences, then as per Article 663 of the Federal Constitution, there will be a joint committee will be appointed, meaning a few members from the Dewan Rakyat and few members from Dewan Negara will sit together. Then they will sort out the differences to ensure the bill is passed. So this is how then after Dewan Negara also passed the law, then it goes to the consent of the king. So as I mentioned earlier, as per Article 664 and 4A, it requires the assent from the Yang di-Pertuan Agong. But kindly take note that under Article 66 4A, there's an amendment we made, if not mistaken, in 2002 under the Mahathir's Tunku Dr. Mahathir's administration, that if Yang di-Pertuan Agong does not give his assent within 30 days after the law has been passed by the parliament, if he does not does that, then the law will be automatically assent. Saudara kena lepas bacaan ketiga dan satu undang-undang telah diluluskan, seterusnya dia akan pergi pada Dewan Negara dan akan mengikut proses sebagaimana saya telah terangkan tadi. Dan lepas kalau Dewan Negara pun sudah luluskan undang-undang tersebut, dia akan terusnya pergi kepada Yang di-Pertuan Agong untuk beliau memberikan sebagai satu katakan menjadikan undang-undang itu secara rasmi kepada negara kita. Tapi terdapat satu pindahan telah dibuat, kalau saya tidak bersalah, pada tahun 2002 di bawah kerajaan Tun Dr. Mahathir, iaitu di mana pindahan telah dibuat kepada Perlembagaan Persekutuan pada iaitu artikel 66 4A, di mana kalau Yang di-Pertuan Agong telah gagal untuk memberikan kelulusan rasmi kepada undang-undang tersebut selepas 30 hari Parlimen telah meluluskan undang-undang tersebut, undang-undang tersebut akan secara automatik menjadi undang-undang negara kita. So then after that, as per article 66(5), a bill is required to be gazetted. Dan selepas kalau Yang di-Pertuan Agong telah memberi kelulusan rasmi, seterusnya undang-undang tersebut akan diwartakan sebagai di Warta Kerajaan sebagai dan akan menjadi sebuah undang-undang yang rasmi, dan undang-undang tersebut akan dimulakan take effect lah, akan dikuasakan sebenarnya. So ini adalah proses bagaimana sebuah undang-undang, satu undang-undang diluluskan di negara kita. So this is how the process works in as prescribed by the Constitution, how a bill is being passed by the Parliament actually. So we go to the next thing. Right. Sorry. All right. So I'll skip this. I think later on we'll share the exceptions of when Sorry, can you guys hear me? I think a crash problem here.
Can hear.
Sorry everyone, I had a technical issue. Sorry everyone. Okay, so this slide mainly talks on the exception when the legislative process does not require to be followed up. But I will leave it later on. We will share the slide. All of you can have a look, study on it one by one. So I'll just go to the next one, which is a bit important. Okay, all right. So next one is the federal list and state list under the 9th schedule. Seterusnya adalah sangat penting, adalah di sini adalah kalau dilihatkan di sini merupakan adalah kuasa-kuasa di mana parlimen dari kerajaan persekutuan boleh membuat undang-undang, dan juga di mana perkara-perkara mana yang kerajaan negeri pula boleh membuat undang-undang. Dan juga kita ada lagi satu jadual yang mengatakan jadual di mana perkara-perkara tersebut dikongsikan oleh kerajaan persekutuan dan juga kerajaan negeri. So kalau dilihatkan dari segi federal senarai kerajaan persekutuan, so if you look into the federal list of this is the 9th schedule. Okay, these are the things that the parliament may create law, and this is where the state assembly may create law, and we have the third list where the areas been shared by both parliament and state assembly actually. So kalau dilihatkan, if you see some of it are being shared and some of it are not. It is solely the prerogative of the federal government actually. For instances like the internal security, some of you might have a question why a state does not have its own police powers, because under the constitution, and also the police comes under the federal government, and national defense comes under the federal government. It's not under the state. And for instance, like finance, main big bills comes under the federal level and not the state. The external, especially the foreign affairs, menteri luar negara adalah di bawah kerajaan persekutuan dan bukannya kerajaan negeri. And kalau dilihatkan di sini, so Dewan Undangan Negeri hanya boleh meluluskan undang-undang mengikutkan perkara-perkara yang telah dinyatakan di sini, dan juga kerajaan persekutuan adalah berdasarkan sini. Tetapi perkara-perkara yang telah dinyatakan di sini ataupun dikatakan concurrent list, Dewan Negara dan juga Dewan Negeri boleh meluluskan undang-undang. Okay, so ini pun saya bagi slide akan di-sharekan, you all akan nampak. So I'll go to the next one. Seterusnya adalah eksekutif, badan eksekutif. So badan eksekutif adalah badan yang merangkumi dari iaitu dua, iaitu ketua negara dan ketua kerajaan. Executive body is consists of two actually, which is the head of state and the head of government based on our constitution. So as you see, as I mentioned earlier, we follow the constitutional monarch system. Therefore, our country's head of state is the Yang di-Pertuan Agong. And under Article 32(3) of our constitution, it is prescribed that the Yang di-Pertuan Agong comes from the 9 rulers of our the 9 rulers, sultans in our country actually, and they come on a rotation basis for 5 years. And our current Yang di-Pertuan Agong is Yang di-Pertuan Agong Al Sultan Abdullah Shah, which is also the Sultan Pahang, and currently he's the 16th Yang di-Pertuan Agong actually. So let's look into his function. So as I said, his function, most of it are basically are non-discretionary, meaning he only follow the advice of Prime Minister, and he is there to do it on a symbolic purposes actually. So appointing the Prime Minister, the Deputy Prime Minister and the Cabinet Minister are basic. The Prime Minister, we will look into it on more when we look into the Prime Minister's functions and things, how he's being appointed. But Cabinet Ministers is Yang di-Pertuan Yang Agong, the one appoints, but is based on advice of Prime Minister. So this is non-discretionary. Dismissal of ministers, other than the Prime Minister, the Prime Minister can advise the Yang di-Pertuan Agong to dismiss a particular minister actually, if the Prime Minister has in mind that he's no more fit for the office. And under Article 41, it is the duty of the Cabinet to always ensure information is given to the Agong, and Yang di-Pertuan Agong act based on the advice of the Cabinet. But in our country, as the head of state is Yang di-Pertuan Agong, he is considered as the supreme commander of our armed forces as per Article 41. And next, also he appoints and removes person from the Public Service Commission of the Federal Public Service thing, as provided under Article 135. This is also on the advice of the Prime Minister. And the appointment of few members of commissions and example of constitutional, which we have the election commissions, all be done, appointment will be done by the Yang di-Pertuan Agong, but with the advice of the Prime Minister. So the Prime Minister will be advising the Yang di-Pertuan Agong who are the nominated members to be appointed as a chairman or the members of particular commission, example an election commission actually. Next, we have the also appointment of Chief Arm of Forces, Article 137, the Attorney General Chambers, the Auditor General. All of these are also based on the advice of the Prime Minister to the Yang di-Pertuan Agong. But power to proclaim an emergency, as I think most of you will have known that this was a hot topic last year during the administration of Tan Sri Muhyiddin Yassin, because for the power to proclaim an emergency is the sole discretion of the Yang di-Pertuan Agong. as per Article 151 of the Federal Constitution. Only the Agong has, even though, but Agong cannot himself declare an emergency. The advice still need to come from the cabinet, but the Agong has the discretion to decide whether to allow the to declare an emergency or to not, because that is his discretion power actually. And some of other powers, why his powers and functions. I'm gonna go on. And also the Yang di-Pertuan Agong also, in sense of judiciary, he's the one appoints the High Court judges, the Court of Appeal, and the Federal Court judges in our country. This is also based on the advice of the from the Prime Minister. And power to grant pardons is basically his sole prerogative, but based on there's a pardon board which they will advise the Yang di-Pertuan Agong who needs to be pardoned, but the decision is on the Yang di-Pertuan Agong. This is a bit of discretionary. And next is on parliamentary. I think I've explained in detail just now. I think I'm apart from what I've explained, extra is here is that he also appoints the clerk senate of House of Representatives. This includes the secretary for the Dewan Rakyat, Dewan Negara, and others I think I've explained it. And lastly, he's in relates of Islam, the religion of Islam. He's the head of religion of Islam for federal territories in his own state, for Melaka, Penang, Sabah, and Sarawak, and also for the religious affairs for Kuala Lumpur, Putrajaya, and Labuan. So as you see, some of the powers here mentioned prescribed under the Constitution, mostly are non-discretionary, meaning he acts on base of the advice from the Prime Minister and the Cabinet, and not by himself, except for the dissolution of Parliament, the proclamation of emergency, and also appointing the Prime Minister. That is this. That all is the sole discretion of the Yang di-Pertuan Agong actually. So let's go on. Or next is the executive, the government, and as you all know, the head of government is the Prime Minister. And if you see in this picture, this is our current Prime Minister, as I believe all of you know, and this is the current composition of the cabinet ministers. Basically, the government of the day, the federal government, in sense of federal government, it is basically run and headed by the Prime Minister and together with his cabinet ministers. So we look into now the appointment of the Prime Minister. So as I said, the King, Yang di-Pertuan Agong, as prescribed by under Article 40 sub 2 of the Federal Constitution, exercising his discretion, he appoints a Prime Minister from who needs to be a member of House of Representatives. So kalian seperti mana saya katakan, mengikut Artikel 40 sub 2 Perlembagan Persekutuan kita, Yang di-Pertuan Agong akan menggunakan budi bicara beliau untuk budi bicara baginda untuk melantik seorang Perdana Menteri yang merupakan seorang perlu menjadi merupakan seorang ahli Dewan Rakyat. Dan Yang di-Pertuan Agong dalam budi bicara beliau, baginda percaya bahawa ahli Dewan Rakyat tersebut mempunyai support ataupun sokongan ahli-ahli majoriti ahli-ahli Dewan Rakyat untuk beliau menjadi Perdana Menteri dan mengetuai kerajaan. So as per Article 43(2) of the Federal Constitution, the Yang di-Pertuan Agong has to appoint Prime Minister from Dewan Rakyat, who is a member of Dewan Rakyat, and in the Agong's in his judgment, he believes that that particular member commands the confidence of the majority members of the Dewan Rakyat. And as I showed here, as for simple majority, the particular member who wish to be a Prime Minister and to lead the government has at least more than 112 members to support him for him to become the Prime Minister and lead a government in our country as prescribed by the Constitution. So 112 is the simple majority and 148 is the 2/3 majority. But in practice, although as per under Article 4(2), it is the discretion of the Agong to decide who has the command, is his discretion. However, if example, there's a clear-cut number by a particular member of House of Dewan Rakyat, then the appointment is merely a formality. So basically, for the past before 2018, for the past years of election, all the time it is clear that Barisan National Government will have the number to form the government, and whoever been nominated will have the support of their members of parliaments, and they will form the government. And only after this 2018, with the Sheraton move and so on, there was some anky-panky issues which have made the issue of when to determine the Prime Minister has commands the confidence of majority of the House. So looking into the next point is whether a Prime Minister can be dismissed. As you all see, the Reid Commission, which drafted our constitution, in their report, they mentioned that a Prime Minister can be removed or sacked by the Yang di-Pertuan Agong when there's a clear case that the Prime Minister has lost his support in the House, but he does not want to resign. Kalian kalau dilihatkan seperti mana saya katakan, Reid Commission telah draftkan perlembagaan kita. Dalam laporan mereka telah menyatakan bahawa Perdana Menteri boleh dipecat oleh Yang di-Pertuan Agong apabila yang telah dibuktikan bahawa sememangnya ahli Dewan Rakyat itu tidak mempunyai sokongan di Dewan Rakyat tapi tidak mau meletak jawatan. Namun dari segi perlembagaan tidak dinyatakan secara jelas. Yang saya nyatakan di atas itu adalah hanya dinyatakan dalam laporan mereka. However, whatever I mentioned mentioned above here, it is only in their report, but in our constitution, it is not really clearly stipulated that if a Prime Minister has lost his support, that the Yang di-Pertuan Agong can sack him, because under Article 43(4), it merely states that the duty is on the Prime Minister to resign as a Prime Minister when he lost his support. Hence, the legal position is really quite uncertain here, and hence it is why to really clearly understand how a PM is dismissed or how a PM is lost his support, we have to look into the case of Stephen Kalonikan and also Tun Abang Haji Openg. This is a case where it was an issue in Sarawak at the time actually, and in which at that time this YB Stephen Kalonikan was the CM for state of Sarawak at the time, and there was an issue saying that that he has lost his confidence in the by the members of the state legislative for Sarawak. However, at that time he was tried to remove, but the Kuching High Court held that the governor of Sarawak at that time does not have the power to dismiss YB Stephen Kalonikan, because it was not proven in the House of Law that he have lost his support, meaning there was no motion being brought in the State Legislative Assembly to show that the members of the State Legislative Assembly has voted upon whether they vote for Stephen Kalonikan to remain as a CM or not to remain. So this is a module how we can determine the support of a Prime Minister, and also similarly in the in state level of a Menteri Besar and also Chief Ministers. So, but however, in 2009, there was known as a Perak constitutional crisis. This was after Pakatan Rakyat won the Perak state, which was at the time it was led by PAS Dato' Nizar Jamaluddin. But however, after a year, there was a jump. Again, few Pakatan Rakyat have jumped into Barisan National Government, and at that time, Sultan Perak also did not follow the module of ensuring that a proper motion was passed in the State Legislative Assembly. But Sultan Perak interviewed all the members of the State Legislative and determined that Dato' Nizar Jamaluddin has lost the confidence, and he did not heed to the advice of Dato' Nizar to dissolve the State Legislative Assembly to pave way for by-election, but he appointed Dato' Sri Zamri as the new Menteri Besar, and from there was some sort of precedent has been set due to this. But if you look into the Sheraton move, at that time, I will say Tun Dr. Made have followed the Article 43.2, believing that he have lost his support. I'm just taking a neutral stand in the sense of looking into the federal constitution. He believed that he have lost, he have resigned, but after he does that, the king, Yang di-Pertuan Agong, did not know who has the majority support at the time, because this is because, again, I believe the best way to determine a PM confidence of support is by bringing a motion in the house as how prescribed in in Stephen Calabun case, because by this there will be a clear evidence that whether that particular member of Dewan Rakyat has a support to remain as a prime minister or not, even if someone has been appointed by the Yang di-Pertuan Agong, as in the case now our uh, yang amat berhormat Datuk Seri Ismail Sabri, it is best that a motion has been put forward to show that he still has the majority of support to remain as the prime minister and to run the government of the day actually. So same has done in the after resigning of Tan Sri Muhyiddin, because the Agong could not determine who has the support, therefore he has to interview each member of parliament to determine who has the clear support to be appointed as the prime minister. So that is the dismissal of PM. Next is the power of PM. And I see, based on the constitution and also the hierarchy in our country, the prime minister is considered is the most powerful person in our country, because the function and the power of prime minister is too wide and too powerful actually. Because if you see under Article 43 2B, as I said, the prime minister, the one proposed his list of ministers that he wants to the Yang di-Pertuan Agong, and mostly he can insist for his choice to be taken. And I say at the same time, he has the power to choose, switch or promote, demote or dismiss any ministers he wish so, or he also can have how many ministries as he likes, because the constitution gives wide power to him. And next, the prime minister also determines when cabinet shall meet and shall have meetings. As for now, our government of the day practices every week of Wednesday the cabinet sit downs for meeting to determine their policies, and also the D-day of the task of the government lah, how they go on, and any policies that being brought forward, it has to go through the cabinet and the cabinet has to pass it, because later on it comes under as the collective responsibility of the ministers, meaning the whole government agrees to a policy or to a law, then if it is been passed by the cabinet, is considered that the whole government is taking responsibility for it actually, not only the prime minister. So again, as I said, he also can create some cabinet committees as he prescribes. He can also appoint any advisors that he wishes to appoint. As for now, as you know, YB Yang Amat Berhormat Datuk Seri Ismail Sabri appoints Tan Sri Zainal Osman. He has his advisor for human rights and commissions, and he have few other advisors, because the constitution gives him such power actually. And next, as I said, he also chooses the 43 senators who needs to advise to the Agong to appoint them under Article 45. And also, as I said, when a parliament will be summoned, when it will be dissolved, and all comes under the power of the prime minister, because he is the head of the parliament, actually head of the committee at the time, being as a prime minister. And only after he advised the Agong can call up for parliament for sitting and also for dissolution. But only after the prime minister have advised the Agong to dissolve, that's when the Agong has a discussion to decide whether to dissolve or not to dissolve. Till then, Yang di-Pertuan Agong cannot by himself to decide to dissolve a particular the parliament actually. And next, this is where I like to touch why I say the prime minister has a lot of power, because he appoints most of the important constitutional posts actually. Meaning a point means he advised the Yang di-Pertuan Agong who shall be the candidate, who shall the Yang di-Pertuan Agong appoint for these positions. For instances, the judges for the superior courts, the Attorney General, the Governor of Melaka, Penang, Sabah, the Auditor General, the Election Commission members of the chairman and members. So it looks like the Prime Minister has a lot of power. Similarly goes to the SPRM Commission chairman also. Hence it is why now many activists and many juries, law scholars are fighting and saying that this appointment should become under the prerogative of the Parliament rather than by the Prime Minister, meaning the Parliament should advise the Agong, but this still requires a constitutional amendment because this gives the Prime Minister the power as prescribed by the Constitution. So next is the Cabinet. As I said, the Cabinet's ministers are basically members who are the supporters of the parties, backbenchers coming from the parties who are appointed by the Agong on the advice of PM. But these ministers, they can come either from either houses, meaning they can be a member of Dewan Rakyat or also a Dewan Nagara as prescribed under Article 43 to be, for example, a current member is our YB Tunku Zafrul, our finance minister, who's basically, as you know, he's not a member of Dewan Rakyat, but he is a member of Dewan Nagara. He was appointed as a Dewan Rakyat member, and from there he was appointed as the finance minister. And as I said, the function of cabinet is to advise the Yang di-Pertuan Agong on how the government they have to do. They formulate government policies and also has to control, also meet up and decide how the implementation should be. And lastly, as I said, it is the collective responsibility. This is clearly prescribed in Article 43(3) of the Federal Constitution, meaning any decision made by the government of the day is considered a collective responsibility decision made by the whole cabinet, not only by the Prime Minister actually. So hence it is why any ministers who are being in that particular administration is considered the majority of support in cabinet. That is considered, even though they do not, one minister does not agree, but majority agrees, still it is considered as a collective decision made by the whole cabinet actually. All right, so next is on the separation of power. So as I said, by having a constitution, a federal constitution, we have the features ciri-ciri dengan mengadakan dengan ada satu perlembagaan persekutuan ni, dia mempunyai satu ciri-ciri iaitu pemisahan kuasa. So why we have this separation of power? Because by having this separation of power, because if you see, as I mentioned earlier, as I've showed to you, the constitution have clearly prescribed the function of each bodies, and this is to prevent one body is monopolizing and have absolute power actually, to reduce governmental powers, to avoid monopoly, and also to protect the rights of our citizen. Mengapakah kita adakan pemisahan kuasa ini? Seperti mana saya tunjuk tadi, badan-badan eksekutif dan legislatif telah mempunyai fungsi-fungsi yang telah dengan jelas dinyatakan dalam perlembagaan persekutuan kita. Dengan adanya begitu, dia memberi ciri-ciri untuk memastikan tiada ada salah guna kuasa, dia mengurangkan penggunaan salah guna kuasa juga, tiada ada monopoli oleh badan eksekutif, dan untuk memastikan hak-hak kebebasan dan juga asasi rakyat kita terjamin. Ya, so seterusnya, separation of power in Malaysia, there's because we are adopting a Westminster system, unlike American system. Because in America, it is said they follow a very strict sense. Meaning strict sense means the president is not chosen by the Congress, but is elected by the people itself. Yeah, and the cabinet also is appointed by the president and not under by the comes from the Congress. Kalau dilihatkan pemisahan kuasa dalam negara kita tidak sama seperti di Amerika, sebab Amerika menggunakan satu segi sense yang sangat-sangat strict, disebabkan kalau dilihatkan presiden di negara US dilantik oleh rakyat sendiri, bukannya beliau dilantik dari parlimen mereka, di mana di negara kita dalam perlembagaan kita, sebab kita ikut Westminster model, Perdana Menteri adalah merupakan ahli Dewan Rakyat. So dia nampak ada sedikit overlapping. So kita sedikit ke liberal sense. Ya. So ini yang perbezaan dari strict sense dengan liberal sense. So sama ada whether there's an overlap between these three organs. So as I said, because we follow the Westminster system, so there are some sort of overlapping. If you can see that, example, legislation and executive, we can see the YDPA is there, but it's more for ceremonial purposes. In judiciary, the parliament has its own power to punish and give punishment to the members who are not following any decision made in parliament in regards of a member. It cannot be brought and questioned in the court, meaning any rules that have been done, it cannot be questioned in court as per Article 63(1) of the Constitution. And judiciary and executive, as instead of judiciary and executive, I will say there's many overlapping because the judges are being appointed by the Yang di-Pertuan Agong on the advice of the Prime Minister. Okay, and secondly, the AG. AG is considered as part of the executive, and he's appointed under the advice of the Prime Minister by the Agong. But the magistrate and session court judges comes from the legal service, who the head is the executive actually, which is the Attorney General actually. So there's a question whether overlappings are there. But the most important thing with the Westminster module, what we have here is this: whether there's a proper check and balance. Dengan adanya ciri-ciri pemisahan kuasa ni dan mengikut sistem Westminster ni, kita adanya ciri-ciri dari segi imbang dan kuasa, penyeimbangkan imbang dan kuasa, check and balance. So kalau dilihatkan legislature dan if you see in legislative executive, YDPA ensures that the Prime Minister is voted out. He need to tender his resignation if he does not have confidence of the member of the Dewan Rakyat. The legislature, they control the on the sense of the finance bills. They ensure there's a scrutiny is there. Also question time, select committees are there to ensure the member of parliament asks question to the ministers to ensure they are functioning properly. And in sense of legislature and judiciary, we have where the judges, okay, the court ensures that the law that has been passed is not against the constitution, because as any law that has been passed by the parliament or the state legislative assembly must be ensured that it does not go against any clauses of the federal constitution, because Article 4(1) of the federal constitution clearly says that any law that is being passed inconsistent with the federal constitution is considered void. So therefore the court is there to check and balance whether the law are passed in accordance with the constitution. If the law being passed which is not inconsistent, then the rakyat or any members, they can bring up a case in the court to ensure the court to determine whether it is in accordance with the constitution. And next is the executive. So they are all, as I said, executive and judiciary, they are also there to ensure judges, okay, if as you under the constitution is prescribed for superior court judges, if they found to be not fit to be a judge, that executive can recommend, advise the prime minister to have an independent body to be established to determine whether investigate and come out with proper decision whether the judge is still allowed to be a judge or no more. So these are the check and balance available there. So that is the main important principle or features that we have with our federal constitution actually. And next, okay, let's go into the electoral system in Malaysia. I think this will be our last part already, and I'll open for floor. Just give me 10 minutes more, guys. So I believe I'll go straight next to the, okay, in Malaysia, what are the voting system that we are practicing actually? So we are basically practicing the first past first post system, meaning as long a candidate wins a simple majority, he is considered the winner of that particular election actually. Example, now we're having a Pirayan Johor. Example, the seat of one of the seat. So if that day on that day, the member total number of vote casted was around 10,000, but one of the candidate has the most majority of 6,000 seats, then other members, they are still considered as the winner of the particular election actually. So I believe most of us know how when a person can vote in our country actually. So this is prescribed under Article 119. And after the constitutional amendment bill into 2019, which is the work of our president, our party president, YB Syed Saddiq. So on 15 December 2021, the law came into effect. Now there's an automatic registration whenever citizen attain the age of 18 years old. And these are the qualification for a person to become a voter actually. And next question is, some of you might think why we have 222 seats and how these seats are being drawn, the border, how the border was drawn actually, the boundaries to basically to draw these boundaries to get this proposal. It is by the election commission, and the election commission is established under Article 1142 of the federal constitution. And when they draw the boundaries, they have to take into account of these four principles, which is the concurrency principle, which is that the boundaries shall not go against cross the state and federal boundaries. Each constituent must be divided accordingly. The administrative principle, meaning whenever they draw a boundary or they have a constitute, in that constitute, there are all proper facilities for registration and also for polling to be held, and also to take into account the rural weightage principle, meaning how big is the number of electorals. The numbers of electorals must be equal to as one. It cannot be like in this particular constitute there are a lot of electorals, but the other one is lesser. It must be equal and ensured the voters, all overall voters voice are being heard. And lastly is the status quo principle. So when they draw the boundary, it has to be done by this. But after the boundaries are being drawn, it will be then the commission will then send the report to the cabinet. Cabinet will pass it, then they will pass it to Dewan Rakyat for it to be passed. But however, whenever Dewan Rakyat comes in, because as you know, the bills always will be brought by the government. So whenever government tries to have a new boundaries or constitutes, it basically gives up a possibility of grey mandering. Grey mandering means they just want to ensure by opening a constitute or by reducing a constitute, they want to ensure that particular day of government they can win in that particular seat, meaning they try to reduce the number of electorals by putting in a way of a racial taburan essentially. Example, in that particular seats, example in Bukit Matajam, they want to reduce it, they want to make it into two more constitute, because they know in that particular seat it's difficult to win. So that's where grey mandering happens. And with doing that, they're basically not following up all the four principles that I've mentioned earlier. But because, as you know, always if that government of the day has the majority in parliament, it will be easily passed of this constitute. And that's why, as I said earlier, initially we had 51 seats. Now, day by day, so much amendment. If you look up into our federal constitution, you can look into Article 114. It clearly 114. You can clearly say how many boundaries, how many time amendments have been done to increase the number of seats of parliament actually. So now we have 222 seats actually. And next is the conduct of election. So as I said, under Article 55(4), an election has to be held within 60 days from the date the parliament will be dissolved. So example, if today parliament is dissolved, from this date, within 60 days, the election commission has to announce the date of the next general election and also the nomination date. If more than 60 days, then it is considered as a constitutional crisis, because the constitution clearly prescribed that within 60 days after parliament dissolved, there need to be an election. Similarly, most of the states in our Malaysia country, they do follow the same. their state constitution prescribed this similarly. So once EC will then go for a meeting. Once they have received the notice from the Speaker of House, they will meet up, decide the nomination date and the election date. After the nomination, the campaign will only start after the nomination process, and it need to be ended 12 midnight the day before the election lah. So there are also few regulations under the Offences Act. What are the things what you can do for campaign, which is by distributing pamphlets, letters, posters, closed door talks, meetings, as well public rallies, house to house rallies, and also electronic media. These are the ways that prescribed under the Election Act for campaign to be done. And next, okay, how to become a candidate? For you to become candidate, as I said, is how prescribed under the Constitution as earlier. But what are the procedural things to be done is to become a candidate for parliamentary and state, because under Section 16 of the election law, it gives power to EC to set up any amount of deposit, but the maximum amount is 20,000. So the current deposit is that for parliament, if you wish to be a parliament candidate, you need to pay a deposit of 10,000 ringgit. And if you are standing for a state legislative assembly, you need to pay for 5,000 ringgit. And you only can, the candidate can only claim back this vote if they can get 1/8 of the vote that they receive on the day of the election actually. Similarly, they also need to pay for campaign materials, which is parliament for 5,000 and state legislative 3,000. This deposit they only can claim back if they have taken down all their banners, flags, posters within 14 days from the date the election is over. And also the election law also permits a candidate to appoint a polling agent, also counting agent, known as Pachaba. This is to ensure to safeguard his interest at the polling station. We also have the postal vote, I think everyone knows. And okay, these are the few election laws that we have. One of it is to have the enforcement unit. That's why if you see whenever election is announced, the election commission also will announce a team of 15 members actually for them to oversee the election that particular constitutes. And next is the electoral offences. So this is the example of electoral offences. One of it is mainly is the expenditure limit, because under Offences Act it only allows a member for Dewan Rakyat only to spend not more than 200,000, and for Dewan Undangan Negeri not than more than 100,000. If they go more than this, then I'll show you later. You can challenge as for them to winning their election actually, which is bribe, as we all know, it's a standard thing. But most important election laws that we always see is on this actually. Lastly is on the challenging the election result. So the Reid Commission have recommended that election petition, okay, under Article 118 of the Federal Constitution, the election petition you can file it in the High Court. Then a High Court judge will be known as the election judge. But for you to challenge the election result under Section 32 of the Election Offence Act, you need to ensure one of these grounds is proven to the and being satisfactory by the election judge. Then any result of that particular election or the particular constitute will be overthrown. Then there'll be again an election will be going on. So these are the grounds. So that's all from me. So thank you. So now we will open for the floor for the question.
Dinesh, I'll read some questions from the chat box.
Yeah, okay.
Wenkit and Tingy is asking regarding the attendance of some Dewan Rakyat members.
Okay, right, wait, let me, okay, I'll go up one by one, yeah. Okay,
there's a lot of MP not present, the meeting still go on. May I know why? Wenkit.
Okay, okay. This is, can I know the name, sorry? Chong Wenkit. Okay, all right, thank you so much, Chong Wenkit, for your question. Okay, all right, Mr. Chong Wenkit, for this question, you ask, sometimes Dewan Rakyat not really are coming, right? Yeah, for your own, I just would like to share my experience. When I was studying my law in my university, at the time we had a trip to Dewan Rakyat, and a similar question I posted to the members there and also the officers there. If you see, as I said, under the constitution, it is prescribed that the law of how a conduct a parliament has to be done is parliament has its own rules. And as I said, the rules is basically the book that always we see in the parliament sessions. But in the rules, there's no rules that make it compulsory for the Dewan Rakyat to attend every day actually. The reason that given to us is because member of parliaments are also sometimes required to go back to their constituents, and especially on the government side, who are the member or who are the ministers. We see most of the time the ministers will not be attending the parliaments, but again this is most of the time they are getting excused because there's no clearly stipulated laws or rules that make give them punishment or make it them compulsory to attend every day. But in sense of a parliamentary democracy and also an bipartisan understanding, it is best, at least as how our own party president have raised up, I think, in last sitting, when during the speech of our opposition leader, yang berhormat Dato' Seri Anwar, there was not much majority of the ministers was not there. Even the prime ministers also was there. So on a bipartisan way, it is best that at least during important bills or during important debates, most of the members are there to be attended. But as I said, again, the quorum is 26 of members. Most of the time, sometimes if you see in the videos, some of them will be outside. Actually, they will be there in the day one, in the vicinity of the parliament, but they will not be inside the day one. So sometimes that's where cases where the speaker has to ring the bell to ensure they come in the attendance. So I'll go to the next one. Nope, Mr. Ng Tining, the MPs will not be disqualified or dismissed for parliament for not attending frequently. But again, they have to look into it. What are the reasons for? Because a member is only other than from Article 48 I show, they can be the seat will be vacant once they have passed away, or and also due to some sickness, they themselves have resigned. Other than that, they will not be dismissed or disqualified. Okay, next is the bill can only, okay, Chong Kai Xiang, yes. Okay, for bill can be only be proposed by, okay. If you see in sense of bill, it also can be proposed by the opposition. When it being proposed by the opposition, it also can be proposed by a backbencher from government actually. But when it's being proposed, that bill will be classified as a private bill actually. And in the Dewan Rakyat, as I said, the head of the Dewan is the Prime Minister. So hence, they will always give priority to the government bills. During my trip to the parliament, I have seen where, for instances, where YB Gobind Singh at that time have brought up so many bills. At that time, opposition have brought up so many bills on the 1MDB issues, which have always been put as the last on the meeting aturan actually, agenda actually, and government bills will be given the priority. So yes, even private opposition can also bring bills in Dewan Rakyat actually. Next.
Okay, and Wenkit asked, how does the EC set the size of a constitution with different population in the state?
Okay. Okay. Which who's okay, John Wenkit. Yeah. How? That's why I as I mentioned, Mr. Wenkit, they has to follow the principle that has been prescribed in under Article 114 of the Constitution. But this has not been being practiced in our country because, as I said, when the commission proposed the boundaries, it will be brought to the cabinet. The cabinet will pass it. It will bring it up to Dewan Rakyat. And as I said, Dewan Rakyat is always before 2018. The BN government always has the number to pass the law actually. And as I for boundaries, it does not require 2/3 majority actually. As long as simple majority is there, it is enough for the law for the boundaries to be passed and the constitution to be added on actually. Hence it is why by not following that principle, that's why certain constitute we can see some certain constitution have more than 100k electorals, but some are very lesser amount of electorals, but we still have a constitute. It's not being brought into together. One of the reason why we have this a lot of seat is to make the tough for the opposition to set up their own government actually. So I'll go to the next question. Separation of okay. Okay, separation of power may not always effective as possibly. Okay, yes, Mr. Kaijiang, that's why, as I said, to ensure this separation of power is being effective, functionable, That's why we need a lot of institutional reform now in our country actually. By meaning of institutional reform, what I'm saying here is, example, the parliament has to have a lot of select committees. For now, we have very few, and by having not by having the select committees, certain powers also need to be given to the select committees, whereby by having these select committees, take all the time the ministers, the policies, the government laws can be scrutinized, because if we, as you see, whenever parliament has a sitting, the government ensures that the sitting is in a very short period, and they try to bulldoze their bills all the time. Because with that, there's not much time for proper debate in the parliament actually. Hence, it is why, as I showed the legislative process just now, in the committee stage, it is best that the bill goes to the specific select committees rather than the whole house debated, because by having the whole house, not all of not all the 222 members can debate, because the time will be very short. As you see all the time in our parliament sessions, that's why always opposition fight with the speaker. I don't have time, I don't have time. So one of the way to ensure the separation of power works is by having these institutional reforms, which is to have a lot more select committees. Secondly, like I said, the prime minister has a lot of power, which is appointing important constitutional posts, example like the AG, the SPRM commissioners, election commissioner chairmen. These all should come under the check and balance of the parliament rather than the executive. Then the separation of power can work effectively. So next, we have
A question from Kanishan. Is there a way to remove YDPA influence in our government? Keep in mind, I'm only asking for the government side, not for the religion part.
right. So for like I said, the constitution have clearly prescribed that if you see, the one Yang di-Pertuan Agong does not have a lot of powers in determining the government policies or government how the government works actually. It's mainly by the government, because if you see, most of the thing is he acts on the advice of the prime minister actually. So it is, what we have to do here is to reduce the power of the prime minister and to ensure there's a proper check and balance on the cabinet, because the cabinet advise the Yang di-Pertuan Agong. I think your question is more into like the discretion of when how the Yang di-Pertuan Agong appoints the prime minister. Because if you see, as I said, this Lanka Sheraton, the Sheraton move have made the that's why I say the best way for the Agong to determine how to appoint the prime minister is for motion to be brought in the House of Law, and the motion being passed by the 222 members, and to determine whether that particular member is having the support to stay as a prime minister or not. And also comes in for a new prime minister, is best for him also to put a motion and to show to the Rakyat that I have the majority to stay on as prime minister and to do and to become the government actually. That in that way, maybe it upheld the spirit of our constitution actually. So next, I think that's all right.
Oh.
Yeah, all right. So thank you guys. So that's all for me. Thank you for listening to me. And I'm so sorry if I'm going very fast. I hope all of you get to capture and get some knowledge from today's session actually. That's all for me. Thank you.
Oh, another final question by Yu Xiang.
Dr. Lim. All right, Dr. Lim. Yes, I'm familiar with Germany's election system, but I never put it in the slide today because I do not want to confuse you guys today. But just this is my opinion, and also some of our legal experts in our country. They do not really keen of a system like as in Germany actually, because it will then complicate the way how our voting system will be, and it also will complicate for our rakyat to understand how the voting system works actually. So as for now, I believe the system, whatever system we have, the first past first system is still all right, it's good. Just that the problem is that again is with the realization process, the boundary process actually, because in the years of span, the Barisan National Administration has made it so much seat that it makes us difficult now to ensure to win a lot of seats for us to form a government actually. Excuse me.
Okay, thank you so much, Dinesh.
All right, that's all. Thank you guys. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you everyone for attending. But before we go, please do take some time to fill up the feedback form, which is already inside the chat box. It's a Google form. Just takes 3 minutes to fill in. And before we go, maybe take one picture together.
Wait, I stopped the setting. I stopped sharing. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.